Linda's General Store, $1.89.
The jorts route intersects the pants route, and what we are calling the hem.
Unbridled success.
Back with another episode of DIRTCAST. Today I have Bina, the owner of the Philly Bike Expo. The expo is going to be celebrating its 15th anniversary this year. Bina, I'm sure you're getting crazy busy with organizing vendors, selling tickets, whatever that may be. Appreciate your time jumping on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure. So, like to start all these just a very general question. Being the owner of the Philly Bike Expo, kind of points to your life mainly revolving around bikes, right? But there had to be a time in your life where you kind of noticed that switch. So I just wanted to ask, when you kind of noticed that happening and when they started becoming more of a focal point in your life.
Yeah, good question. So my dad is a frame builder. He builds custom bikes in Philly, for 40 plus years. So bikes have been a part of my life since I was a baby. My sister actually used to reside in a basket or a playpen or whatever they used back in those days, in his shop. She's a couple years older than me. And then it just kind of, took a back seat. We learned how to ride bikes early as kids, but my dad was so busy building bikes that we didn't really do anything with bikes, post that, learning how to ride. We lived on a hill. My mom was nervous about us riding on the hill. So like I actually didn't grow up like on a bike. It was probably when I was, I don't know, 19 or 20. My brother is a couple years younger than me. He started racing a little bit of cyclocross, doing a little bit of road races, a little bit of bike touring. And he was doing this bike touring with my dad. And I was kind of like jealous, I wanted to be a part of that too and do the weekend riding with them. So I got some Jameis road bike. I don't even remember what the, model was. It was too big, right? I didn't get a custom bike. I got, a production bike. And I rode that for a bit. And then I got a bike from my dad, but also not a custom bike. I think probably just the like smallest bike that he had hanging up in his rafters and was like, oh, this will fit her. So I rode that for a while. And we used to do like these fun weekend tours. We'd ride up to like New York State or we'd ride up to like Easton and turn around. And it was really fun. It's like a highlight of my life, but also just, getting into bikes with my dad and my brother. Um, and yeah, then I finally got a custom bike when I was like 29. And I rode that as part of the Tour de Afrique. I think now it's like TDA Global Cycling, but I was their communications officer and assistant tour director from Khartoum to Cape Town. So I rode my trusty gravel bike, gravel slash touring, because it was like pre-gravel. But we did get on some gravel. So yeah, that's
Did
kind of
you
my
uh,
foray.
did you hold that over your dad's head at all that you had to go through multiple renditions of bikes before he finally had that custom frame for you?
Bikes growing up, you must have so many bikes. And I was like, I had no bikes and I didn't even get my first custom bike till I was almost 30.
So, it sounds like it's a little bit of a different story than I've heard in the past, where you almost jumped headfirst into bike packing, bike touring, as opposed to a lot of other people that I've spoken with who, they just start out riding around town or commuting, and then maybe they race, and then bike packing is kind of the thing they do afterwards. What was the draw to that other than just, spending time with your family? I know they were going out and doing it, but it seems like you never really went away from it.
I always loved to travel. I think because, we didn't travel as kids. My dad was a frame builder. So I always had this like epic wanderlust. So I thought it was really cool to, get to another place by bike, be it another city, another state. This was credit card touring, mind you. We stayed in hotels and stuff. Usually the three of us crammed into some, tiny motel. But yeah, it was like the allure of traveling by bike versus just, kind of using it for commuting. I also never really developed a love for cycling in the city. Like I do it and will do it, but I just prefer the, country roads, the, back roads. And people always say like, oh, why gravel? And it's like, well, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be gravel. It can be paved, but I just like, being away from cars and the scenery. And so this was kind of like my first dive into that, was these little bike tours with my dad and brother.
Yeah, it is interesting you say that because while I do love riding gravel, there's something special to me also about, I'm from Lancaster, riding just the back farm roads that you don't see a whole lot of cars. I'm not a fan of riding through the city either, but those paved roads, have a special place in my heart too, because you get to see just a different side of Pennsylvania that you wouldn't be driving on those roads. There's really no reason for me to go out there. But you see a very different side of Pennsylvania than just the woods and gravel or, the main roads if you're, just road riding.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so switching gears a little bit, I do want to talk about the expo just in general. So you mentioned before we started recording, it's the 15th anniversary. Uh, why the Philly Bike Expo? Why was that something that you wanted to start, wanted to be the founder of, be the owner of, and where did that idea come from?
Yeah, so it started in 2010. That was the first year we did it. Um, I was working with my dad at the shop. I worked at his shop probably like through my teens and early 20s, doing like sales and, you know, if you want to call it marketing and organizing. And I used to travel with him to bike shows, to promote his brand. And, we started thinking like, wow, we could really use something like this in Philly. And we had even reached out to some organizers of current shows at the time, like, hey, you should bring the show to Philly. And, there wasn't really interest in that. It didn't really pan out. So my dad, called me one day and he's like, we gotta make our own show. So he was like the founder and, the brainchild behind it all. And so we started it in 2010. It was a little smaller at that time. It was held in the 23rd Street Armory. So it had a little bit of a grittier vibe. But we started out with like, 60 something exhibitors. And we kind of outgrew that space immediately. But since event planning was new to us, we figured we'd be, a little cautious. And coincidentally, at the time, I was getting my bachelor's at Texas A&M in like recreation park and tourism science. And so I was doing stuff with like recreation businesses and things like that. So I'm one of those people who got like a weird off degree that actually uses it. So yes, I was like able to apply, things from my major from my classes at the time because I was still in school when we launched the first year. So it was kind of cool to be able to like apply some of those things. And some of my professors were cyclists, so they loved hearing what I was up to.
It so 2010 to this year, you had to have learned a lot, probably made some mistakes along the way, right? Are some things that stick out to you of improvements that you made from year one or year two or year three, and you know taking those things and building it into what it is now?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we didn't do early on that we've focused a lot more on in the last, 5, 7 years is really making it like family friendly and having programming that's geared towards families. Besides the like marketing aspect of like, oh, we can bring in families and that brings more people. It's like these kids are, the next generation of cyclists. And so, teaching them about safety and maintenance early on and even from like a consumer standpoint, if they're learning about the products and talking to exhibitors now, like those are going to be customers in the future. And depending on if the kids are riding now, the parents are going to be customers now. So yeah, so we've put a lot of focus on that, and that's been really rewarding for me. That's probably my favorite area of the expo to, kind of peruse through, just seeing the kids like, some kids like learn how to ride a bike, you know, at the expo. They weren't before, they show up on a balance bike and they end up, leaving, being able to ride two wheels. So yeah, I don't know. It's pretty cool.
That alone has to have kind of a soft spot in your heart, right? Of you see that for the first time. I'm sure people are going nuts and clapping. It's probably awesome for the kids as well.
Yeah, it's super fun. And also, in contrast to my, childhood where I really wasn't on a bike, I made sure to put my kid on a bike, when he was like one. So he got his first balance bike at one and, pretty much just stood over it and let it fall, for about a year. But, now he just like lives on that thing and pretty much anything with wheels. But yeah, he loves riding and his handling skills have far surpassed mine in his 9 years of age.
I can only hope that for my kids as well. They are in the balance bike phase right now, and our daughter, who's 5, she's slowly transitioning to the pedal bike. Just gets frustrated and wants to drop it and get back on her balance bike, but she'll get there.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess for people, families bringing kids out, what are some things that the kids would have to do there?
So we have a whole skills area. And there's it's like a set track and there's, obstacles if they want to do that. There's, a way around them if they're, not ready for that. We have folks from the early Childhood Mobility Coalition who host that area, who have a lot of expertise and experience in, helping kids ride and teaching them, the basics. We do like arts and crafts, bicycle themed arts and crafts. We do like safety demos geared for kids in the kids area. Lots of stuff to keep them busy. I mean, most of the kids, they spend the whole day there
It's like a whole new park that they never knew existed.
for sure. And there's
Uh,
bikes and helmets provided. They're welcome to bring their own, but we provide that as well. And different sizes from, the teeny tiny balance bikes up to, you know, larger kids bikes.
that's awesome. You did say bikes would be provided; they could bring their own. That kind of got me thinking about just what what kind of bikes we would see there in general, right? Who's what can people expect to see when they come to the Philly Bike Expo, maybe for the first time, and they're just walking in with no clue what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. We really have the full spectrum of bicycle industry exhibitors, from custom frame builders, to artisanal bag and accessory makers, mid to large size component brands. We have a large contingency of, advocacy organizations, travel and tourism, and, bicycle events. So a little bit of everything. And the bikes range, of course, from, road bikes to touring bikes to tandems to gravel, um, recumbents, a little bit of e-bikes, kind of whatever you're into. And that's always been a thing that we've, pushed for with our exhibitors, but also with our seminars and our bike rides, that there's like something for everyone. It's not a super like sophisticated slogan, but that any cyclist from, brand new, just getting into it, kids, um, elite racers, serious commuters, enthusiasts, bike packers, that there's going to be enough for them to see and new stuff to learn about. Rides. We do like social rides throughout the weekend as well. And same thing, we have everything from like, chill history, Philly sites kind of rides to, faster rides with like the local triathlon clubs or, mixed terrain rides hosted, usually folks from my squad, from the PB squad will host that. So that if you're looking at the exhibitors, you're looking at the schedule of events, you're looking at the rides, that like there's going to be something that interests you that's going to be able to fill up a full day or the whole weekend for you.
And it sounds to me like, you mentioned anyone who's just starting on a bike to, professional athletes. And that's a wide range of not just cyclists, right? But just different personalities of people from different parts of the country, possibly the world. Um, but whenever I've gone to events, it always seems like someone has a smile on their face. And it turns out that it's just, you might be, like that brand new cyclist or that elite athlete, but still you're part of that bike community. So is that, something that you think about when you're putting this entire thing together of, it's a community building event at the same time of showcasing all these process or products?
Yeah, for sure. Because, you know, we always think of, right, the cycling scene as like a community. And even though it's built up of lots of communities, all over geographically, it is all one cycling community. And people really feel that at the expo. Like we see that in our feedback, in our surveys, that people really just enjoyed their time, enjoyed their interactions, and the exhibitors too. And, obviously, like everything's on the internet now. You can see products, on Instagram, everyone has like amazing photos and videos, but there's something about that face-to-face interaction. And the exhibitors who are there, are excited to meet, cyclists and want to talk to them and want to explain how the products work and the services that they're offering. And it's really a positive experience. And then, yeah, the like seminars that we offer, adds that like educational component. So whether you're looking for like a tech clinic or, some like super niche nerdy frame building seminar, or you just like basic safety or, fitness training, bike fitting, like again, you'll find something. We have, specifically for this audience, we have a lot of bike packing on the agenda. Gravel stuff, we're excited. Well, I have to say, right, we're excited about your film being shown. So that's really cool. I've been sharing that with people. And then there's other, gravel and bike packing seminars. There's someone doing something on like bike packing using like public transportation. So specifically for folks in Philly who want to get out of Philly and like what's the best way to do that with public transportation. So that's pretty cool. We're also having like it's like speed dating for gravel events in PA. Dave Pryor's hosting it, and we're going to have organizers from gravel events from all across the state, kind of doing like a brief intro to their event so people can kind of like see what's, on offer and choose what works for them. And then we have, David Landis from like Wild Elk and Endless Mountains Gravel doing something a little bit more on the like storytelling side of like, the local community and voices that are integral, in these like bike packing route and gravel route, collections. Um, so yeah, and then as far as like exhibitors, like I said, we have a little bit of everything. But we have like I'm kind of excited about like Chumba and Moots are coming well, Moots came once, way back and it's been a while. Chumba has never been. So excited for that. They're also joining like a contingency of titanium builders that we're going to have. There's also AE Manufacturing, and he does also titanium bikes. He's new to the expo, but he got his career built over at like Merlin and Dean. So pretty cool stuff there. Um, and then I thought of this because I've thought of like the overalls and the jorts and all that stuff. Like Ripton is coming for the first time. So I think they'll do well. I think they'll be happy and people will be happy to see them. So that's kind of
I
fun.
think that I think that could be a very popular booth.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I guess, in kind of, you're 15 years in, is there, is there a next step for you? Is there something more that you would want to see, at the Philly Bike Expo, maybe in like 5 years or 10 years, something in terms of expansion or something that you're just not able to do now?
Yeah, I would love to do some sort of event that is like at the convention center that's part of the expo, something like we've kicked around, but it hasn't, come to fruition yet. Like, either like tiny track racing indoors or like, have you seen those like really short circuit, like indoor crits?
Mhm.
Things like that, I think would be really cool to incorporate, as like a Friday night or a Saturday night event. And like, unfortunately, I'm just like sort of at capacity,
Sure.
wearing all the hats. But I always, sort of like, my dad used to host the junkyard cyclocross race, like back in the day. And that was, at his shop, in the junkyard there. But like bringing some sort of like fun alternative race element. So that's something that's always sort of like on my mind.
And it would be interesting to see, just because it would be in such a confined space, how that would work out and how many people you could get racing, and would it be, would kids want to race on their Strider bikes and have people, ringing cowbells while they're racing, stuff like that
Yeah.
would be really interesting to see.
Yeah. We did kind of like not, it wasn't racing, but we had a test track one year when it was like co-hosted by a brand and they brought some like pretty epic, like they were supposed to be like hills, but people turn them into jumps. And it got pretty wild. And so that sort of also gave me the idea that like, okay, maybe we wouldn't have it that extreme, not turn it into like a Red Bull thing, but that there was like space and possibilities because we usually use the perimeter of the hall anyway as sort of like a test track. So, and the halls are like, over 100,000 square feet. So yeah, it'd be interesting to like, just sort of investigate that possibility.
So what I'm hearing is we're going to fill the halls with gravel, and then we're going to have a
Yeah.
gravel race through the halls. Uh,
Yeah,
just,
that
well, I guess
that would be something.
we're not going to put a kicker on the rocky steps and have people jumping off of them. That's not something we'll be doing.
So many possibilities.
There are. Um, yeah, I mean, we're really excited. We're looking forward to coming out, debuting the documentary, which I know Jake is working hard on because I get text messages from him every day about how he's getting closer. So I'm excited to see it because I haven't seen it yet either, and he won't let me watch it. So,
Oh my gosh, I had no
you
idea.
I nope, I don't get to watch it until he says it's done, and then hopefully he'll let me screen it before the expo because I won't be able to make the expo this year. But if
Oh,
not, I gotta wait until Nate's in April, which is a really long time
it is a long time.
from now. Yeah, thanks for having us out. I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing the feedback of what people think.
Yeah, same. We're excited to have y'all there. It's going to be a good time.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yep, you too. Take care.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
You too.